Okay, so in this video, what I'm going to do is I am going to solve this quadratic equation, but the instructions say to solve the quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Okay, so you should remember that on the board I wrote that there are 4 ways to solve a quadratic equation. Okay, you can solve it by graphing and see where it touches the x-axis. You can solve it by factoring. You can solve it by completing the square, and the final way we're going to study is the quadratic formula. Now here is the quadratic formula right here, so you may want to pause the video and copy down the formula. The formula is x equals negative b. Let me zoom in on it. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Now, let's recognize that we're solving quadratic equations in standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So a is the number next to x squared, b is the number next to x, and c is the number here without a variable next to it. Okay? Now, let's also talk about why we're going to get 2 answers. You see this plus or minus? At some point, we're going to write the equation negative b plus all this divided by 2a, and then a second one, negative b minus all this divided by 2a. That's where we get our 2 answers. And so let's work this problem. Okay, the first thing I always like to do is I like to write the formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. And then I like to identify what a is. A is the number in front of x squared, that's 1. B is the number in front of the x, which is negative 12. And c is the number by itself, 36. Okay, and now what we need to do is we need to plug these 3 numbers in for the letters that we see up in the formula. So let's do that. So I've got x equals negative, and then whatever b is, in this case is negative 12, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so I put b all squared, minus 4 times whatever a is, times whatever c is, which in this case is 36. All over 2 times a, which is 1. Okay, so you've set up your equation, and now all we have to do is we need to simplify this. Okay, so let's work to do that. And so I've got x equals, and right here I have a negative and a negative. 2 negatives in a row make a positive 12, plus or minus the square root of, and then negative 12 squared is 144, minus 4 times 1 times 36 is also 144, and that's all over 2, because right here 2 times 1 is 2. And so let's keep working to simplify. And so I've got x equals 12 plus or minus the square root of, and 144 minus 144 is 0, all over 2. Let's continue to simplify. So now I have x equals 12 plus or minus, and the square root of 0 is just 0, right? It's not positive 0 and negative 0, it's just 0. And so now what we have is, we have this very simplified. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write x equals 12 plus 0 divided by 2. And then I'm going to write a second equation where I say x equals 12 minus 0 divided by 2. So I'm going to say, okay, 2 different equations. X equals 12 plus 0 divided by 2, and a second equation that says x equals 12 minus 0 divided by 2. So notice this plus or minus you write the equation twice, 12 plus 0 divided by 2 and 12 minus 0 divided by 2. Okay, and so now let's evaluate each of these individually. And so I've got x equals 12 plus 0, which is 12, divided by 2, so x equals 6. And here I've got x equals 12 minus 0 is 12 divided by 2, and so x equals 6. Well, what you notice is I got 6 twice. So in this case, there's just one answer. My answer is 6. Okay, so if I were to graph this, if I were to graph the original function, okay, on a coordinate plane, what we're saying is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let's go back and let's write down the original function. The original function was x squared minus 12x plus 36. So I've got the function x squared plus 12x. No, I think it was minus 12x. I'm going to mark that out. X squared minus 12x plus 36 equals 0. Okay, that's our function. And what we're saying is it's going to cross the x-axis at 6 only. Now, since the leading coefficient is positive, my parabola will open upward. So my parabola will look like this and like this. And the only place it's intersecting the x-axis is right there at 6. So there's just one solution. X equals 6 is your only solution. So let's go back through and just review the steps that I did to solve this, okay? Here was my original equation, and what I did is I identified A, B, and C, and then I plugged them into this formula, okay? And then you can see all I was doing step by step was simplifying the formula until I came to a final answer that x equaled 6. Okay, and then I showed you that if we were to graph that, the only place it would cross the x-axis is at 6.